So over the last few days, we've been installing this coffee bar. So there's still a lot more work left to go here, but let's just kind of walk through this process so far. So as you can see, we have a full height end panel here with some crown at the top, a filler on the left side, and what appears to be 4 doors. So on the bottom here, these 2 doors just function like a normal set of doors. This large shelf will actually be placed here in the center, giving them a little bit more storage options. And up here in the top, we have a bifold door giving you full access to this giant space. So the homeowner is going to have a coffee maker, things of that nature in here, possibly a small refrigerator in the lower section. So there's also going to be a sink in this coffee bar. Countertop is solid walnut. You can see our plumbing and our water lines below. And this cabinet, we actually had to assemble here on site because we built it in pieces. Instead of using a pre-finished for this cabinet, because it's going to be open a lot, we wanted to make sure it was something that was going to look really nice. So we used standard walnut plywood and actually had it finished. And in order to finish it correctly, we had to make sure our pieces were broken down so that the finisher had an easier time with them. And it made our life a little bit easier bringing them up into this unit.
Yellow good or bad?
There are a lot of steps getting up into this unit, and the staircases do curve, so bringing up larger pieces is a bit challenging here. So to kind of run through this whole installation process, first we had to set our ledger. What it is just a 2x4 that's screwed to the back wall that this lower cabinet actually rests on. When we're setting the ledger, we use a series of lasers as well as actual levels to make sure we're starting with a good level point. Once we have the ledger set, we can go ahead and measure for all of our plumbing. So we have a condensate drain line that's coming in here, the actual sink drain, the hot and cold water, and there's even an electrical outlet a little higher up. All of these things we have to kind of take into account based off of the ledger height and then where our end point is going to be so that we can locate where those are.
Wow.
Go ahead.
And drill this hole. I gotta cut that back. So. In the front, there are 2 adjustable feet so that we are able to level out our cabinet. So as I had mentioned, this upper cabinet actually came in 5 different pieces, so we had to assemble that here.
Same guy? I thought.
This solid wood countertop is actually the bottom of this cabinet. So it's screwed into the sides and the back like we would typically attach the bottom of our cabinets. So we actually assembled this case on the floor, lifted it up place it onto the lower cabinet, and we're able to secure it to both the cabinet and to the back wall. That allowed us to move on to our right side filler. So this filler actually gets scribed to the floor as well as the back wall while staying flush with the top of the upper case. This filler is attached to our actual cases with a series of lamellos and dominoes. And we also go ahead and add additional screws in the lower section here behind the hinges as well as in the back. Same thing with the upper case. We're always trying to hide our screws or put our screws in a location that is less visible. Then we're able to do the same with this left side filler. So we're able to scribe it, attach it to our case with dominoes and lamellos. Same thing with the screws in the lower case as well as into the upper case. With our cases set and the fillers attached, the next step was to put on the crown. And the reason I put the crown on first is because I'm actually able to hide the screws that hold the crown on behind the track so that you never see those either. For the bifold door, we're using a series of different hinges as well as tracks. So like I mentioned, you can see the track above with European hinge that pivots with the door opening and closing while riding inside that track. For the cabinet side, we're using just standard Bloom cabinet hinges. This allows us a lot more adjustability when installing these doors. For the actual bifold themselves, we're just using some sauce hinges. So these sauce hinges actually allow us to fold these doors back on itself and keep these doors nice and snug so we're not taking up a bunch of space in between the two doors. If we were to use, say a European hinge there, we'd have a much larger gap here, and they're just overall a little bit cleaner for this application. We're always trying to do as much in the shop before we get into the field, but it's not always the case to get every last thing done. This is one of those things that is so much easier to do in the shop rather than in the field. So we make sure to get that done prior to coming here for install. This cabinet's going to have an LED strip that will add light to this whole space. Because we're using an angled track, we want to make sure that you're not actually going to see this once you are looking into the cabinet. So we went ahead and added this walnut filler to help conceal that track when you are standing here. And the walnut filler helps blend in, especially it being on the hinge side. You're not really going to notice it as much as you would if those tracks were just on the sides of the cabinet. The lower doors were able to just pop on. Everything was prefabricated in the shop. And then I just had to scribe the toe kick. The last step for us would be to install the shelves, and then the electricians and plumbers will come back and button everything else up, and we'll have this coffee bar 100% ready to go. James is over in the next room installing those closets, so let's go check in on his progress. Oh, hey James. So as you can see, James has gotten a tremendous amount of work done here in the closets, but right now we're kind of in his way, so we'll come back next week when this is all installed and give you guys a better look. And don't forget to stay tuned for that Q&A. Q&A?
Kind of a quasi Q&A. So usually we're talking about the previous episode. Today we're talking about today's episode.
Because there was no previous episode.
Because there's no previous episode. So kind of a unique take, but I think it's good so we can talk about the video you just watched. There's a tool used in the video relatively early on. Kind of looks like a woodpecker meat thermometer. What is that?
That's an awl.
Okay, how do you spell that?
AWL.
AWL.
Mm-hmm. So what that does is it comes to a very sharp point.
Okay.
If you were to mark, a line or a location that you need to put a screw in, you push that in first, kind of like a thumbtack, right? It's pointed like that. So you can push that in, and that will give you a good starting point for your screw. Sometimes if your countersink, it will, spin a little bit on your workpiece and kind of go off center from where you want your screw hole. This gives you that kind of positive location for your screws, your countersinks, things like that.
It's very sharp.
Very sharp. You almost cut yourself on it.
I tried to just grab it from you, and you're like, bro, what are you doing?
Didn't work out so well.
All right. You used a handful of different tools in this video for scribing.
Mm-hmm.
Walk me through. What do you like? What do you prefer? I know we've talked about this at length, but this is a great video with an example of a lot of scribing.
Sure. My preferred method is to use an electric hand plane and a file. So I'll take off, depending on how crazy the scribe is, I'll either cut fairly close to the line with a table saw or a jigsaw. And I think you'll also see that I use the jigsaw upside down. I don't know if you got that footage there, but I use the jigsaw upside down oftentimes when I am cutting close to those lines, so we're not tearing out the finish or dragging our jigsaw across the face of the finished pieces, right, causing any scratches or dings with the jigsaw kind of bouncing. So from there, clean it up with the planer. I can put a pretty heavy back bevel on the piece with the planer, which makes fine tuning that line a little bit easier, especially with the file. I get pretty close with the planer, so I don't do a ton of file work. But if it's something where there's a big dip in the wall, you really can't get that curve with the planer, so you kind of have to go with file or a rasp. And one of the other things that we used is the Raz. So it's a Festool grinder meets sander kind of tool, very high-powered, aggressive sander. And that's another tool that we'll use to creep up on that line and remove a lot of material very quickly. And it's smaller, so it does allow us to kind of get into those contoured spaces and creep right in on that line. So
I
a
know
couple different methods.
I know that's James'
Yeah, he prefers the Raz.
weapon of choice. Why heavy back bevel? I'm going to join the live real quick so I can see questions.
Sure.
Because that's really far away.
So the heavy back bevel, if your piece is flat and you're going up against the wall, when you're scribing your line here, having that extra back bevel just is less material that you have to remove when fine-tuning that line. So if you have, let's say, a hump in the wall, when you're cutting a big back bevel on there, that's less material on the face of your scribing piece.
Right.
So when you're using a file or the Raz, it's less of a material, and we're using 1 1/8 or the thickness of most of our scribes. So when you're trying to remove that much material with a sander or a file, it'll take you all day. So putting that back bevel on there is just so much less material to have to remove.
Okay. That's something that I've always seen you guys do, and I think it's probably a pretty handy thing to know.
Yeah.
So let's take a look kind of behind the scenes. This video is kind of a how-to. You kind of really got to see a step-by-step of this coffee bar being installed. Something we don't show in a video because we're sensitive of people's time is how often things are being put in place, being taken out of place, being adjusted.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that a little bit.
Sure. So you know, and it's more than just that, right? We can't show everything in the 10, 15, 20-minute videos.
Right.
So we are skipping over steps, and people call us out in the comments all the time, oh, you forgot to do this. It's like, well, we didn't forget to do that.
We just put a few more screws in?
Yeah, exactly.
Do you want to see every screw go?
And it's the same thing for, you know, you'll see in this video, or you've seen in this video, the crown molding. We took that piece off and on several times, trying to get it to fit correctly. The molding wasn't actually a complete 90-degree square. It had a slight inward bow to it, inward angle to it.
Yep.
So it made it very difficult to scribe because the pieces were, to install because the pieces were in behind our case, our face frames. So we had to kind of test out a few different methods of attaching that. So it came off and on a few times. Plus it got in the way with trying to install some of the doors and the track and, you know, things of that nature. And the track is another one. And this is kind of a good segue to another point. With the track, I took the track on and off 2 or 3 times because the screws to hold the crown in are behind the track. But the track wasn't installed previous to being in the field. We talk in the video about everything being done as far as possible in the shop before it goes into the field.
Right.
And this particular coffee bar, although small, there was a lot of stuff that we missed in the shop that should have been done here rather than in the field. Things like dominoing, lamelloing the face frames. That should have been done here in the shop. And we have a reason why we didn't do that. You know, the walnut interiors are all standard walnut, not pre-finished, so we had to send all that out to the finisher. Well, we were sending other walnut stuff out to the finisher as well, so we lumped that all in together. So when it came time to make the painted stuff, we only had our dimensions and what have you to go off of. We didn't have any of the pieces for those upper cabinets here in the shop, so they were never here at the same time, so we weren't able to do some of this work. And that's why you see me kind of installing some dominoes and lamellos in crazy positions in place. Same thing with adding the filler for the light strip.
Right.
You know, those are all things that should have been done in the shop, but you know, unfortunately, in this time we didn't get that opportunity. We absolutely should have, but yeah, I mean, it's things like that you don't always get to see in these types of videos.
And this just goes to show the time that goes into these things.
All right.
So I'm condensing a day and a half's work, 2 days work, sometimes a week's work down into
just a couple minutes.
10 minutes. So it may seem like, oh yeah, wow, that's
all right.
It's pretty slick there, you know, but there's a lot of thinking and, you know, dialing in, troubleshooting that goes into any installation.
Yeah, for sure.
There was a question, I X'd out of this by accident, so I'm gonna, pardon my rage. Do you recommend doing the floors first and then kitchen cabinets over them?
That's my preferred method. I think you can get we make all of our toe kicks removable. So once you do your floors first, your floor is now above your toe kick. I guess, yes, there's probably a way where you could make it so your toe kick drops down behind your floor. But some people do plywood down first. I think we are actually doing that in an upcoming project. We ran into some issues with delayed flooring. So it wasn't able to come in time. So to keep the ball rolling and the process rolling, we are going to put some plywood down. But yeah, floors first all the time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that to benefit, like, down the road, like, hey, we want to renovate the kitchen, but we like our floors?
Right, yeah, you know, that way you're not trying to patch in the floor later on. You do have that full run of flooring, and how much flooring are you actually saving by not putting it under the cabinetry? Right. You know, it's going to be minimal unless you're doing, you know, you'll see this a lot in like commercial work or high-end,
where that
like
space
high-rise
adds up.
Right, where it's like, yeah, it might only be like 20 square feet a unit, but when you have 100 units plus, that adds up quite quickly.
Right. All right, there you have it. And the last thing I have here, you kind of covered it though, is that balance between shop and field. When does it, I mean, you kind of covered it, but if you want to put another spin on that, when does it make sense to?
I think, I mean, I would say everything in the shop as far as you can.
Right.
Right. And that's the goal with every single one of these projects we're doing, we're trying to make sure we are completely fabricating everything in the shop prior to it going out into the field. Sometimes things get missed. You know, there was another issue with the closets where there was a couple other dominoes, I think, that never got cut in. So it's things, unfortunately, we are going to miss them from time to time. But I think the ultimate goal is to install everything or fabricate everything 100% here in the shop before it goes out into the field. It saves so much more time. Everything's so much easier to do in the shop rather than
controlled.
Right, in the field. So yeah, just trying to get everything done here in the shop.
Like for instance, in this particular video, James is doing another install, a room over. The guys over at Kelco are working on a handrail. Like, there's a lot going on, and sharing tools and sharing a workbench, and
dodging other.
The more you can take away from having to use that stuff, the faster things are going to go, right?
Yeah.
And I've heard the guys in the Modern Craftsman, I guess Antonio's got a question there. Sometimes you don't see it till you see it, meaning like you miss a detail or you miss a thing. Like, there's no amount of planning that could have foresaw that instance. You didn't see it till you saw it.
Right.
I've heard all three of them talk about it before.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that definitely plays a factor. No doubt about it. But, you know, the things that we're doing in this particular video, 100% should have been done in the shop prior.
All right. And Tony here says nobody would ever take out a Ken kitchen, Doug. Let's be serious.
That's not a question.
That might be true. Yeah, it's more of a
actually
declaration.
No, that wasn't a Ken kitchen. I was gonna say the one we did in Somerville.
Oh.
Where we ripped out the brand new kitchen.
Put in a Ken kitchen. All right. Well, I think that's gonna put a bow on it today.
What do you think of the new format?
If anyone has any more questions, throw them in.
You know what I was thinking might be kind of weird though?
What?
Because the guys who were watching live,
I have no idea what we're talking about. That's all right. I don't really care about these. Just kidding. That's not true. Any design details you're getting tired of doing? Epoxy tables.
You know, I've never done one. I was getting tired of doing flat panel white kitchens.
Yeah.
Maybe about a year or two ago, I feel like we did like several, you know, one after another, and I was just kind of getting tired of it. But we haven't done them in a while, and we do have a flat panel kitchen coming up. I think it's still in design phase, but that's kind of the style that they're leaning toward. So I'm not mad about it. You know, we haven't done it in a while, and
you ready to get hurt again?
Why? What happened last time?
Oh wait!
Hold on. There's more. Bonus.
Hold your horses.
We had a question a couple weeks ago that we didn't answer because it was right at the end like this when we got it, and we're Xing out. So I guess kind of another thing would be, you have a lot of footage of me in the shop and the field lately.
Yep.
But I've been talking a lot about how my role has transitioned largely into being in the office. Why am I in the shop a lot? Why am I in the office a lot lately? Because we're looking for some help.
Oh, there you go.
We're hiring, and someone had asked what that role is that we're looking for.
Yep.
Right, our friend Nicole from Landau Solutions. We are looking for cabinet makers. So someone probably with about 5-10 years experience that we can kind of pass plans off to, knows their way around the shop, and can fabricate to our standards based off the plans, and you know, without having obviously there's going to be a bunch of questions and there's going to be that learning curve, but somebody that can come in and knows what they're doing kind of from day one. Unfortunately at this time we don't have the time to take on an apprentice and kind of teach them. Hopefully very soon we will have some time to do that.
Right.
But this next hire, we're looking for someone with a little bit more experience, and kind of same thing with the field. Someone who can come in and install and, you know, help James out. So, you know, that frees me up to be either in the shop or also in the office, and gives James a hand. Like as you see in these videos, a lot of the times you need a second guy there. You need a second set of hands to kind of help you move some stuff around. And we had how many people carrying in all the parts for this closet in the video? You know, there's
2 people.
Plus Liz.
Oh yeah, Liz, sorry, 3 people. Up, 3 flights of stairs.
Yeah. So, if someone kind of is available that has both, they can do cabinet installations and in the shop.
So if there's a cabinet builder or fitter looking to get in contact, how do they get in contact with you?
You can just email me directly, right, Ken at NS Builders. Easy.
So if you know someone, tell someone. If you want to email Ken, email Ken. Job applicants only, I guess. You just dropped out that email, but
That's all right.
there you have it.
Cool. All right. Thanks, guys.